Okay, we are recording, which is good. So let me make a little start. I'll get the screen up here for everybody. So welcome to this evening's talk, Mindfulness for Focus and Concentration. If we haven't met before, my name's Rebecca Fensom. I'm the Student Wellbeing Advisor here at Downing, and I'm also a mindfulness teacher. So what I wanted to do ahead of the exams, or if you're in the middle of the exams, to show you how mindfulness techniques can really support you during this time. So just to give a brief overview of what we're going to cover in this session, we're going to have a look at what mindfulness is and how it works. So what is it actually doing in the brain? And sometimes there's a few misconceptions about what mindfulness is. So we're going to have a real close look at that. I've picked out a couple of studies which look specifically around how mindfulness can help your focus and your concentration. So some really interesting learning that we can gather that we can implement into our practices. And then I always like to make my sessions as practical as I possibly can, rather than me just talking at you for 60 minutes. So we're going to have a look at some different types of mindfulness techniques as well. So with this, after each technique, I'm going to encourage you just to have a moment of reflection to see what that experience was like for you. So you might want to have a pen and paper handy, or a Word document up on your laptop or computer. You can just do this in your own mind as well. It's fine to do it that way, but sometimes writing it down can be helpful. We are also going to do a practice around mindful eating. So this is a really good excuse to eat some chocolate, I always think, or if you have like a bit of fruit nearby, sometimes a raisin in particular is very good for mindful eating, or a nice cup of tea or coffee with you as well. You can use that if that is more close to hand for you. So just thought I'd let you know that in advance, in case you want to go off it and get any bits before we get fully started. What we're going to do towards the end is really thinking about how we can bring these mindfulness techniques into our daily lives. How can we make it more of a habit for us so that we get more use and more benefit and see the positive outcomes that mindfulness can bring. Okay, let's make a little start. So I wanted to start off just by really setting out what mindfulness is. There are often those misconceptions that mindfulness is about achieving a state of relaxation, clearing your mind of thought, but it can lead to a lot of frustration if we think that we have this sole aim and this focus and this intention in our mindfulness practice. Because we don't have these magic little switches in our mind that suddenly we can flick a switch and suddenly become calm, or we can flick that switch and suddenly clear all of our mind of thought. The mind doesn't work in that way. And Jon Kabat-Zinn is a really famous mindfulness teacher, and I think he sums it up really nicely here in this quote, where he says, mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So there is nothing in there about, sitting in meditation. There's nothing in there about achieving a sense of peace or calm. There's nothing in there about clearing your mind of thought. So what mindfulness really is around paying attention. That is what we are effectively trying to train the brain to do. So we can see already how mindfulness techniques are going to be really useful for focus and concentration, because our ability to pay attention to the task that we are doing is really helpful, and mindfulness is really helping us to develop that skill of paying attention. We're doing it on purpose, so we are intending to do something mindfully. We are in the present moment. So without sometimes realizing, so much of our thinking time can be spent in the past, or it can be spent thinking about the future. So terming this in terms of exams, so often we can feel that stress and that worry about exams, maybe because of previous experiences where we have really struggled in an exam or found it really overwhelming and really stressful. And we can worry and think, oh, what if it is the same as it was before? And often we can slip into future thinking when we think about exams. If I don't pass this exam, if I don't get a really good grade, what is this then going to mean? How is this going to impact on my overall mark? How will this impact on my ability to get a job? How will this impact on my future life, on my success, on my career? And we have slipped so far away into the future that we have forgotten about the present moment, about being here and actually doing the exam. And so what mindfulness is trying to teach us with being in the present moment is to not ignore that, the past and the future. Obviously that does come in, but just bringing back that bit of balance, not sticking always in the past, not sticking always in the future, being able to come back to the present moment. And we're doing all of these things in a non-judgmental way. We are not judging our experience. With mindfulness, you literally can't get it wrong, which I think, especially when we're in exam season, is really refreshing to think that there's no mark, there's no grade, there's no right or there's no wrong. Whatever you experience when you come into that practice is perfectly fine. So sometimes people do come to mindfulness practice and they do feel really calm, they do feel really peaceful, and it feels really pleasant, and what a lovely experience. And sometimes you can come to practice and your mind is literally here, there and everywhere and ping-ponging, and you're distracted by sounds, and maybe your tummy's grumbling and you're so hungry, or maybe you just feel really tense and it's really hard to sit still because you're so worried about all of the things that you need to do and you cannot wait for this mindfulness practice to end. I have definitely, as a mindfulness teacher, had practices like those, and those are perfectly fine. You haven't done anything wrong. It's more just about noticing that experience, noticing what is going on. And sometimes I find that really helpful, actually, is a moment of reflection, a moment of pause. When I come into a practice and I can't focus on the guidance, or my thoughts are ping-ponging here, there and everywhere, that's a really useful practice in self-awareness, because I can think, okay, I've got a lot in my mind. I can't even sit still for 5 minutes. You know, how can I manage all of these competing demands on my time? I know that if someone else asks me to do something, I'm going to have to say no because I'm feeling overwhelmed as it is. So there's still real value in that experience. And this is why we're encouraged in mindfulness practice to step back from that judgment that we do so often in daily life, don't we? We say something is nice, you know, or not nice. We put things into the good and bad camp. It's more just to accept every experience as valid as it is. So what is mindfulness actually doing then? You know, if we think, oh, that sounds nice, okay, I'm going to come to the present moment, I'm not going to judge my experience, you know, I'm just going to see, you know, come here and do this. Well, does it actually do anything? And sometimes mindfulness can have a bit of a wishy-washy persona. People think, oh, it's just a relaxation thing, you know, it doesn't really do anything, you know, really in depth. And we're really lucky that over the last 50 years, there has been quite a lot of extensive research done into mindfulness and what happens in the brain when people do these mindfulness practices. And what we have been able to see is that there are real changes in the brain when we practice mindfulness. There is this concept of neuroplasticity, that is that we have the ability to change the habits of the mind. So the mind, the brain is not set in stone. We can work it like a muscle, and we can develop and build it and make it stronger like a muscle. And we can develop new neural pathways within the brain. So just because we think one way at one point, it doesn't mean that we can't change those thinking patterns and those thinking habits. So what the science and the research has shown is that regular practice increases the prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain where we rationalize, where we plan, where we assess. It actually makes it thicker. So it becomes a more useful part of the brain. It gets worked more. So it's like that muscle getting bigger. And what it does is, making it bigger, it increases the connections to different parts of the brain that helps with our focus, our concentration, our creativity. It increases the impact it has on the limbic system, where a lot of our emotions, you know, sit. So, mindfulness can really be seen to improve these things and help strengthen them, because we can bring them onto line quicker. And it also reduces the impact that the amygdala, has on the rest of the brain. So the amygdala is where our trauma response sits, so our flight, fight and freeze, if I can get my F's in the right order. It reduces the impact that the amygdala has on the rest of the brain as well, because those connections from the prefrontal cortex get so much stronger and we use them a lot more. The connections from the amygdala to different parts of the brain get a little bit weaker. So rather than when we come to a point of stress, which happens all throughout our life, but particularly coming into exams, say, rather than the amygdala firing off and be like, oh my God, like this is so overwhelming, I feel like I can't breathe, very much, or I'm really kind of stressed and overwhelmed. When we practice mindfulness, the prefrontal cortex, comes up and we're able to focus and concentrate and be in the present moment a lot more and have our full attention on that exam rather than the worry of the past or the future coming in. So how I often describe it is, imagine you are in a meadow with really long grass. Okay, so the first time you walk through a pathway, that the grass is quite long, that pathway is not that well defined. The more you walk across that pathway, the more well defined that pathway becomes. And the pathways that maybe you have taken previously, the less you start walking over them, the more it starts to become overgrown again and less well used, less well defined. So mindfulness in a way is retraining the brain to think and to operate in a different way. So a couple of studies that I wanted to pick out here. Let me just see if I can move my thing, which I don't think I can. Okay, so a couple of studies that I wanted to show. So the first one by Basso et al. In 2019. So what we had in this study here were 3 different groups. So we had one group that for 13 minutes a day for a period of 8 weeks were practicing a mindfulness meditation. Okay, so that was their task to do. They had another group that for 13 minutes a day for a period of 8 weeks had to listen to psychoeducation talks. So how to improve your focus, memory techniques, how to help regulate your emotions. So a kind of psychoeducation approach. And then they had another group where they had 13 minutes a day that they just had to dedicate to relaxation, to whatever it is they wanted to do, like watching TV, reading a book, something like that. So what they found quite significantly, through the 2 groups, and the control group, between the mindfulness practice and the psychoeducation, is that people who did the mindfulness practice saw a really significant increase in their ability to pay attention, in their working memory, their recognition memory, and had decreased anxiety scores. So they were able to feel happier, feel more positive. So you might look at that and you think, oh, okay, well, that's really great, Rebecca, but I don't have 8 weeks before my exam. Is this really relevant for me? So this is why I wanted to bring out this study from 2010 as well. So this was kind of even more exciting. And in a way, it really shows the power that mindfulness can have in a really short period of time. So again, in this study, they had one group that for 20 minutes a day. Okay, so not an excessive amount of time. Sometimes when I think, 20 minutes a day, I don't have 20 minutes a day. And then I look at my screen time and see how long I spend on social media, for example, and that's more than 20 minutes a day. So if I can spend 20 minutes a day on Instagram, I'm sure I can spend 20 minutes a day doing a mindfulness practice. So what they found here is that people who did a mindfulness practice for 20 minutes a day for a 4-day consecutive period, again, saw an increase in their working memory, in their executive functioning, in their visuospatial processing. They saw those really significant impacts and benefits just from that really short space of time. So mindfulness has been proven, scientifically over the years that with that consistent practice, because we are developing those neural pathways, the more we go over that pathway in the meadow, the more well-defined that pathway becomes. So the more we practice, the more benefit that we are going to see. And the science backed this up, and also just myself anecdotally, as you know, a mindfulness teacher, the practices that I do, I definitely see an impact in my ability to focus and concentrate, to be able to manage those periods of stress. And it's sometimes more that practice of acceptance, you know, that you really learn in mindfulness, not to judge your experience as good or bad, but just to accept, you know. So when the stressful times come, accepting that this is how it is now, but it's maybe not always going to be like that. So there's a lot of really exciting kind of research and science which really shows how beneficial mindfulness is for us. And I think especially during this exam period, adding mindfulness techniques into your daily life is going to really aid you. It's going to really help you to focus and concentrate and to really work to the best of the ability you can do. To me, mindfulness is like a superpower. You know, it adds that extra layer of technique on there, which can help you achieve even more. So what I wanted to do is just to show you how to practice. So we've talked about what mindfulness is, we've talked about how it works, what it's doing in the brain. We're going to cover now like how we actually do it. What do you need to do in order to do a mindfulness practice? And all of these practices are very simple. Okay, there's nothing that you need prior experience for. You don't need, you know, any special equipment, you know, or any special clothes or training. You know, it is just the very simplistic things that we have here. So what we're going to do, I've got, I think, 4 different practices. I wanted to give you a little variety so that you can maybe see which one fits best with you. You know, sometimes one can resonate a little bit more than another. So we'll try these practices out. I will guide you through each one. There's going to be a little period after, just for that moment of reflection. And that, again, is just to encourage you to look into your experience, to tune into that, and to see which one you might want to continue, you know, in the future. So the first one that we're going to do is awareness of breath. I will guide you through it. So if you want to just make sure you are sitting in a comfortable position, just making sure that you're somewhere quiet where you're not likely to be distracted. And the invitation just to close the eyes or lower the gaze. And we're going to start off with 2 deep breaths. So breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Just allowing your breath to come back to a natural rhythm. Not altering or changing the breath. Just breathing in a way that feels natural for you. Noticing that flow of the breath in and out of the body. See if you can push your breath all the way down to the base of your tummy. As you breathe in, the tummy expands. As you breathe out, it contracts. Maybe placing a hand on the tummy just to really connect with that movement. What does it feel like when you breathe? Noticing that movement of the breath. And moving the hand maybe just up to the chest and noticing that breath. As you breathe in, the chest rises. As you breathe out, it lowers. Really tuning into this moment, this physical experience of breathing in and breathing out. Coming into the present moment. And see if you can bring your focus and your attention just up to the tip of your nose as that air comes into the body and leaves again. What does that feel like? What do you notice? Feeling the breath moving through the whole body, that gentle flow of in and out. Just pause and notice. And coming back into the space around you, really feeling your feet against the ground, your back against your chair. Start tuning into the sounds that are around you. And then when you're ready in your own time, just gently reopening your eyes. So an invitation just to spend maybe just a minute, just taking that moment to reflect, and just some questions here to help prompt you with that reflection. So as you were doing that, what did you notice physically? You know, was there one area of the body that you could really feel that breath a lot more, another where you couldn't really tune into it? What did you notice cognitively? What thoughts were going through the mind? Was there anything you noticed emotionally? You know, did you notice a tension or a tightness? Did you notice that actually you felt quite still? Just taking a minute just to tune into that. And that's something you can write down, or you can just think about in your own way. Okay, if you're watching this on the recording, if you want to take a bit more time with that, you can always pause this, you know, before going on to the next one. But just in the interest of time, I'm just going to move through. So the next practice we're going to do is mindful eating. So sometimes people think when they come to mindfulness, they think, oh, I just don't have time to add anything else to my day. I would love to be able to practice mindfulness, but I don't have the time to do it. And hopefully you've seen from that practice we've just done, it only needs to take a few minutes. It doesn't need to be, you know, an extensive, really long period of time always. You know, the science and the studies show that, you know, what we saw in those two previous studies, you know, the 13-minute, you know, the 20-minute, but we can bring that mindfulness element into our everyday experiences that we have. Because as we saw in that quote from John Kabat-Zinn, you know, it doesn't say you have to sit in meditation. You know, it's about doing what you're doing, you know, intending to do it mindfully, you know, placing attention to the activity that you are doing, and, you know, to come with that attitude of non-judgment, so that intention, that attention and that attitude. And eating is most probably, and really fingers crossed, hopefully, something you are doing at some point in your day, okay? Especially when we come into exam period, it's really important to look after our nutrition as well. So mindful eating is something that we do every day, and we can bring a mindfulness practice into it. So we don't have to always add something else into our day, something else to remember, something else to do. We can just add that mindful lens onto the things that we do day to day. And mindful eating is, I always find, quite a fun activity to do, quite a playful thing to do, because so often we just eat and then run. But actually to really pay attention to that physical process of eating, it's really nice, and it makes the food taste a lot better. Like whenever I eat mindfully, I always feel like I can really tune into those tastes and those textures and those smells, and it's you know, it's just such an explosion of experience, you know, when you mindfully eat. So if you're watching this on a recording, if you want to pause and go and get something, you know, feel free to do that. If you know, just have something to hand, that's great. Or even just a drink, even, you know, water, you know, is fine. You can do, you know, a mindful eating or mindful drinking, you know, process. So I'm going to guide it through as if we are eating something, but just adapt it if you are drinking something too in that way. Okay. So first of all, we just want to kind of ground ourselves, try and invite that coming into the present moment. So making sure that you're sitting comfortably, maybe just placing both feet on the ground so you can feel that real steadiness of the floor beneath you. And then the invitation is to take your food item and just to place it in the palm of your hand. And to just feel that weight, that texture. Just to notice those physical sensations of that food in the palm of your hand. And then just see if you can bring it up to your nose and just really smell all those different scents. When you smell that food, what does it smell like? Are there any memories that are evoked? Any emotions that come into your mind or your body as you smell that food? Really tuning into that sensory experience, the touch and the smell. And then just slowly, without chewing, just place that food onto the tongue. Noticing all of those sensations. Maybe the mouth starts to water. Maybe your taste buds seem to come alive as you can really taste all those different nuances in that food. Just very slowly, almost as if you are in slow motion, gently start to chew. Really noticing that physicality of eating, the jaw moving up and down. How that food feels against the teeth, the sounds that are made. Maybe the automatic nature of the tongue running across the teeth to clean the food out. Really savouring this experience. Coming with that real beginner's mind, like you have never eaten this before in your life and it's your first experience. What do you notice? What do you feel? And when you're ready, just swallowing, repeating that whole process if you want to, each bite, tuning in to those sensations, the touch, the smell, the taste. What thoughts come into the mind? What feelings are ignited? Taking on the whole experience of eating. Being here in this present moment. And then when you have finished eating, just coming back into the space. And we're just moving on to just that little bit of reflection again. And this is quite a nice one to reflect on how different that experience is, maybe from normal times that you eat, or if you've used it with a drink, to what you notice different about doing it in a more mindful way. Again, so if you're watching on the recording, if you want to pause for a little bit longer of that reflection, feel free to do so. I'm just going to move on to the next practice. So again, I wanted to just show different types of mindfulness practice really. So we've got one that we're really using the breath. We've got one where we are using that everyday mindfulness, so something that you're doing every day and bringing that more mindful lens to it. And now I wanted to introduce a real visualization practice. And visualization practices are really good at sparking those neural pathways in our brain around that creativity, that imagination, and that problem solving, as well. So I think especially again coming into exams, having that bit of creativity, that ability to problem solve, really strengthening that area of the brain, I think is really helpful. So we're going to do a visualization where we just imagine that we have a candle burning in front of us. So it's like we are artists in our mind and we're gradually building up that picture into that 3D image. So again, just allow yourself to settle, making sure you're somewhere where you're not disturbed. Just gently closing the eyes and lowering the gaze. Taking those 2 deep breaths, breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Allowing your breath just to settle into your normal rhythm. Not trying to breathe in any special way, but just noticing your breath. Do you breathe deep or shallow? Do you breathe rapid or very slow? Just tuning into that inner world. And using our imagination, like we are artists in our mind, we are going to start building the image in our mind's eye of a candle ahead of us. Building up your candle. Is it tall? Is it short? Is it circular or is it a different shape? Is it thin or is it thick? Really drawing out in the mind's eye the size and the shape of your candle. And the colour. What colour are you painting in your mind of this candle? To build this candle, again, imagine in your mind's eye that you strike a match and light it, and that sound as the wick first takes light. The flame starting small and gradually burning brighter and brighter. Imagine in the mind that the flame flickers and then comes to a stillness. Like how sometimes we can feel our mind is full of flickering thoughts, but we can bring a steadiness and stillness. Building up the 3D nature of our image. What can we smell? Does the wax have a scent? Can we smell the burnt match? What shadows is the candle casting? How much light is it emitting? Looking at this flame, how do you feel? Notice your emotions, your body, your thoughts. really building this image in your mind's eye. And then gently bringing yourself back into the room, leaving that image in your mind there. Maybe just gently rolling out the shoulders, tilting the head from right to left, bringing some movement back into the body. And when you're ready, just gently reopening your eyes. So again, a different type of practice, and that's why I think it's helpful to have these moments of reflection afterwards. Again, just thinking about your experience, trying not to bring in that judgment of I liked or I disliked. Think more in that terms of what you noticed physically. Were you able to build that image, or did that feel quite challenging? How did you feel emotionally? Did it evoke any memories for you? Just taking that moment to recall your experience. Okay, so we have just one more, and it's a very simple one, just around finding your feet. So again, I wanted to bring something in that really used the physicality of the body, because sometimes, especially during stressful periods like exams, we can get so caught up in our own minds and our own thoughts that we can become really disconnected from our body. And sometimes our body can hold a lot of tension and a lot of stress, which then, signals to the brain that that we can't unwind, that we can't relax, that we can't focus and concentrate, but we almost don't realise that tension is there because we're so disconnected. So mindfulness practices are really good at helping that mind-body connection, come back online. So this is such a simple practice, and it's really good to do when you are studying, when you are working, if you feel yourself, becoming overwhelmed and becoming stressed, or you're struggling to be able to focus and concentrate anymore, then this is a really simple and easy practice you can do. So just sitting where you are, just notice where your feet are resting, and noticing those physical points of contact with the ground. How do the feet feel resting where they are? Almost as if we put in a huge magnifying glass just on the feet, tuning into the physicality of this experience. Maybe noticing the temperature of your feet. Is there one area, maybe the toes, that feel colder than the rest? Do your feet feel quite warm? Do they feel cozy? And just noticing how your feet feel. Are they comfortable? Are they uncomfortable? Are you wearing shoes or slippers or socks? Noticing those textures against the skin on the feet. And just see if we can just allow the feet to go heavy. Any tension that might be there, the invitation just to let it soften, let our feet sink into the ground. Allow them just to come to a moment of pause. Really connecting with the physicality of the feet right here, right now, in this present moment. Just pause and notice. And maybe just bringing a bit of movement into the feet, a bit of a wiggle of the toes, maybe circling the ankles. And just bringing yourself back into the room. So again, just a moment of reflection, just how that is. It's such a simple thing, but sometimes I know myself, I'm not really aware of my feet, which sounds a really stupid thing to say, doesn't it? But you're not really thinking about them. You know, you're not really thinking about your body and what it's doing, you know, right now, because you're so busy in thoughts of other things. So just that moment of reconnection, you know, how did that feel? And again, there's no right or wrong with any of this. Like you literally can't do it wrong. It's more just about noticing, you know, your experience. So actually, if you didn't really notice your feet, if you couldn't really tune into it, how did that make you feel? You know, was that okay? Did it feel a bit unsettling? You know, what thoughts were going through your mind when you were doing that? Okay. So again, at any point you can pause the recording if you want a bit more time to look to go into that reflection, and to go back to any of those practices that any of you do. I'll try and put in the description like the timestamp of where each practice is, so you're not having to scroll through as well if you watch this back on the recording. So as you've hopefully seen, all of the practices that we've done, they're not difficult, you know, they're not really intense, you know, it's not like running a marathon, but we just need to remember to be able to do it. And if we think of, you know, if you're running a marathon, for example, you have to train regularly to be able to then run that marathon. And if we see that, you know, in terms of our life practices, you know, in terms of times where we have to focus or we have to concentrate, where we need to be able to successfully regulate our stress levels and our emotion, we need to train, you know, for it. We need to put in that practice to help us do it when we get to those moments, rather than just expecting ourselves to be able to cope. So, you know, really learning how to bring in that regular practice is such a game changer in seeing the benefits of that mindfulness practice. So I've got just a few tips, like things that, you know, are very, you know, helpful. But again, try not to see it's like, oh my God, like now I've got something else I need to do or to fit in my day. Hopefully with that mindful eating practice, you can see that it is those everyday things that you can do just with a more mindful focus, mindful lens. That is a mindfulness practice. You know, so maybe just doing a little eating practice every day, maybe when you drink your morning coffee, maybe when you go for a walk, you know, walking really mindfully, tuning into your feet against the ground. Maybe when you are in the shower, you know, the sense of the shower gel, the feel of the water, you know, against your back, you know, all of those things, you can really tune into your experience, tuning into the present moment. That is mindfulness. So it doesn't need to be an extra thing on our to-do list. You know, the things that we do every day can be mindful as well. But what I would say to help you maintain that regular practice is set a regular time. You know, pick your mindful activity, what it is you're going to do. Are you going to do a more formal, what we call more formal practice, or are you going to do something more informal, like eating, you know, or walking, you know, or drinking your tea, something like that? So have that regular thing, really come with that intention. I'm going to do this mindfully. You can maybe set an alarm, maybe a reminder on your phone, like to do your practice, because sometimes if you're like me, I can have very good intentions to, but if I haven't written it down or have a reminder come up on my phone, I'm going to forget. You know, I'm busy, you know, doing other stuff, and when I get to the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I didn't do it again. You know, so really kind of working away either with a to-do list or an alarm or a reminder on your phone, whatever works best for you. So sometimes I think it can be good to try the same practice for a few days, you know, to see how it fits. But then also sometimes I think if we just do the same thing all the time, we get bored, and we're gonna lose that enthusiasm for doing it. So, you know, don't be afraid to change things up, you know, to try new things and see how it goes. And that little point of inquiry where we reflect on how it was, you know, what we noticed physically, what we notice cognitively, what we notice emotionally, that can be really helpful, you know, to do after each one, just to tune into that experience a little bit more. So support for ongoing practice as well here in the Student Wellbeing Centre. Each Wednesday, 4:30 to 5, I hold just a 30-minute mindfulness practice. So that's every Wednesday during term. You don't need to book for that. You can just rock up in it and just sit and do that weekly kind of group practice. And sometimes it is quite nice to practice with other people. It's something that even I, as a mindfulness teacher, really enjoy doing and get a lot of benefit from. I would say locally as well, like other in-person, groups that you can go to. I think the Cambridge Buddhist Centre hold kind of regular free mindfulness practices. If you don't want to do something within the Buddhist tradition, then there are lots of other different community groups that offer that regular mindfulness practice. And if you're not quite sure where to start, then just drop me a line and that's something I can support you to do. I'm also really happy to do one-to-one sessions with you as Downing students. You have me as your wellbeing advisor, and I just happen to be a mindfulness teacher, so you get the benefit of my knowledge in that way. So if you can't make the regular Wednesday session, or actually you want to focus on something a bit more in particular, then come and we can have a one-to-one session. And I do sessions for up to 45 minutes, but we don't need to do that for a full 45 minutes if that feels a bit too much. We can make them a little bit shorter, and you can have them as regularly as you want to. There's no limit on that. You just need to send me an email and we'll get something booked in. So I hope that has been helpful for you in terms of really understanding what mindfulness is, how it can really help with our focus and concentration, how it can really be like that extra layer of superpower for you, during this time, during this stressful exam period, the different ways in which we can practice, and those tips on how to help you maintain it and keep up that regular practice. I really hope that has been helpful for you. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be able to do this for you, and I hope it is really useful. I will just stop the recording now. So thank you.